Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Designing Cities for All, the 2-year activity program of Pakhuis de Zwijger, in which we are taking a deep dive into designing products, spaces, and systems for all. Cities of belonging, we call them, places where everyone can feel at home. But what does it actually mean to belong to a country, a city, a community? How do people create connections to a space, and what makes a home? Today we are airing a special edition of Designing Cities for All, in which we're going to take a journey through the senses, explore the various scales of belonging in a super diverse society, and explore whether it's time to reinvent a collective sense of belonging. We will try to make some sense of belonging. I'm not going to do that by myself. I'm joined here in the studio by Ineke and Maartje. And via Zoom, we will have a conversation with Tom and Maggie. And also we're going to nurture a soul with some music afterwards by Xilan. And before we're going to do that, I'm going to start with Ineke. Ineke Smits.
Hello.
Hello. You're a filmmaker and a producer at Smits and Stout and Smits. I reversed it. We invited you because you made a particular movie about belonging. Yep. But first I want to ask you, because I know this is a central theme in a lot of your movies. What does belonging mean to you?
For me personally?
Yes.
Well, for me it's quite interesting. Long story that I'm not going to tell right now. I ended up in Georgia in the South Caucasus about 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, 32 years ago. And it became my second home. And I've been making films there, I live there. And the interesting thing is that I feel very much at home there.
Partly, what made it you feel at home so much immediately?
Well, there's actually two things you could say that make me feel at home. Actually, the pictures that we're looking at is Abkhazia. It's a different part. It looks very, very run down. This is part of my film, the last film I made.
Yeah, Abkhazia is part of Georgia.
This is a disputable thing.
Disputable thing, yeah.
But in a sense, I will never be Georgian, but I'm with one foot in the country. I know it very well, and I feel very much at home. I'm a little bit of an outsider there. But I've also been an outsider always in Holland. So that makes me, I'm a legitimate outsider in Georgia.
What made you an outsider in the Netherlands?
I don't know. I think many of my friends who are artists are somehow different from the rest of society. And I guess maybe because I had glasses when I was small and I was living in a different neighborhood than most of the people in my school. Maybe because I had another outlook on the world. I don't know. Anyway, so in Georgia, it's very nice that, I have this kind of helicopter view on the country, what is happening there, and I can always make a connection with what I find there on a small scale in the rest of the world. So the connection between what happens there in that particular country with what happens here, for me, is very obvious. And I can use that connection, and I do. In most of my films, I make most of my films in Georgia nowadays. I use this connection to tell something about Holland, for instance, with a story that is actually happening in Georgia.
So you made a movie that aired last year in the midst of the pandemic at the International Film Festival in Rotterdam. It's called Little Man, Time and Troubadour. Can you share a little bit what that's about?
Well, I started about 5 years ago. I started with a question, what is a country? What is a home country? And that question was actually triggered. I live in Rotterdam, and just around the corner of my house, there is the Turkish consulate. And maybe you remember there was this Minister of Health. I guess it was a minister of health who came to promote,
visited the Netherlands
exactly,
a while ago.
Yes, who came to promote Erdogan. And there was a kind of a protest of young Dutch, Turkish people there who were fighting with the police. And I was there. I was just passing by, and I was watching it,
and it triggered you.
It triggered me. I thought, what is happening in the souls and the heads of these young people? I mean, they must be feeling torn between being Turkish and being Dutch. So what is their home? Where do they feel really in their hearts at home? And what does that mean? So this was the trigger. And then I started to do research into nationalism, into country building, into, all these kind of things. And through my research, I discovered that actually culture is a very, very important way to deal with this if you don't want to talk about politics, if you don't want to talk about economical, reasons.
Yeah, with culture you mean the arts.
Arts, yes, exactly. The arts are a very, very, very good way, a very important way to convey a sense of home, or and not only arts but also food, landscape, storytelling, music.
The sensory experience we're talking about today.
Exactly. So that's what. And then I started to dive into. Well, first of all, I chose a country which is completely unknown to get rid of all these kind of other connotations. And I chose the let's say territory of Abkhazia, which is a province of Georgia that declared independence and is not recognized by anybody but the Russians in South Caucasus on the Black Sea. Because it is exactly for the reason that it is a country that nobody, or a territory that nobody knows.
Yeah, it lies on the eastern coast, right?
That's right, yes, on the eastern coast of the Black Sea, just underneath Russia. And I started to do my research there, and I met...
Yeah, because you didn't make this alone, right?
That's right.
So tell me, who's Sipa? What does he do and what does he make?
Sipa Labagua is a typical, for the question of home. He's a sculptor, performance artist, and he also makes, let's say... he hates it to say puppet shows because his puppets are very particular in their design. But I met him, and together we decided to make a little puppet show that would travel around the country and ask these questions to the population. You have to imagine that Abkhazia has about 250,000 inhabitants. But it's a very, very mixed company, let's say, a very mixed society. Turkish,
it's also Armenian, due to history, right?
Syrian, Georgian, Abkhazian, Russian, Greek, you name it. And they all live together. And lots of the problems in South Caucasus are actually coming from ethnic clashes. So we made this show about his life, and this tells something about Sipa. Sipa was born in Abkhazia when it was still Soviet Union, and then his father got promoted in the communist system to Tbilisi, which is the capital of Georgia, and became a kind of representative of the under-republic of Abkhazia in Tbilisi. Then the war broke out when the Soviet Union fell apart, and they moved to Moscow. Yeah. And he was raised, let's say, he started to study arts in Moscow. Then his father got homesick, very homesick, and he wanted to go back to Abkhazia, which was a kind of a difficult thing because during the war, his reputation was kind of questioned both by the Abkhazian side and the Georgian side. Both of those sides said, you are a traitor. You're a traitor to our country.
So the question of belonging is something that Sipa also
absolutely
really triggered to...
Absolutely.
And that's why he wanted to work together with you, right?
Well, I mean, I had to convince him because...
I know it took a while because he was being modest, right? But maybe we could take, because you brought I think a trailer or a clip from the movie, maybe it's good to take a look at that first before we talk further. Or we don't.
Жил-был на отдаленном побережье маленький человек. Маленький человек с большими идеалами. Он любил свой дом, но видел приближение темных теней. Это притча, как я сказал, притча о спящем времени. Мой метод общения со спящим временем – это игра.
Сколько лет она назад была? То есть возникает действительно ощущение того, что давно здесь ничего не движется, не меняется, в какой-то боли застыла, и эта боль вот видно везде.
Людям вдруг стало интересно убивать друг друга. Им это понравилось. Маленький человек спросил у времени: «Почему ты не видишь то, что вижу я?»
В нашей истории максимум 25 лет был промежуток без войны. Но мы до сих пор не научились быть дружно. Мы все равно допускаем эти ошибки, которые допускали раньше, и будем допускать.
Маленький человек решил ехать домой.
Yes, Little Man, Time and the Troubadour. I heard they're going to be showings this fall again, but we still have to wait a little bit for announcements, right?
Yeah, it was the film was supposed to go out in the cinemas in March. No, in June. No, in April and May. And now the plan is, but it depends totally. I mean, there's such a, let's say, an amount of, a tsunami of films coming to the cinemas.
Yep.
Hopefully this autumn the film will be shown in iFilm Museum, Kino Rotterdam, and other cinemas around the country. And it's made also as a piece of discussion.
Exactly. So, maybe later, because later I want to discuss with you why this film is also so relevant to show in the Netherlands. Maybe we could introduce the other speakers first. But before we do that, I know that we also ask you to bring an object with you that for you represents a sense of belonging. And I'm pretty curious what it is.
Okay, here we go.
It's pretty... Oh, I thought it was something really big that was coming out of your bag.
Well, it is actually really something really big.
What is it?
This is a Supra.
Yes.
It's
I'm going to show it on camera.
It's a traditional Georgian tablecloth. And Supra means, in Georgia, Supra means also dinner. Table, a place where you are together and having dinner. And in the Georgian sense, this can even be like a piece of newspaper that you put on the bonnet of a car, and you put like a piece of bread and a glass of wine, and you share it with other people. And this one, I got it from a friend. It's
and it also tells a story, because I see a lot of prints of animals.
Don't ask me what the story is exactly. I mean, this one was given to me by a friend in Georgia, and I have it here.
Yeah, but as soon as you put it on a table, you feel like this is my home.
Yes. And there is, it brings me back to Georgia.
A Supra, that's a beautiful story. Thank you.
Shall I leave it or take it?
Yeah, just leave it. No, let's make a Supra right here. Let's make it like this. Okay, because Maartje, I see you already helping. Maartje Jansen, designer, facilitator and coordinator of Makers Unite Unites Creative Lab. Yeah. And also joined via Zoom is Tom Loijs, curator and program maker at Raum in Utrecht. Hi, Tom. Maybe I can start with asking you the same question, because Ineke brought a Supra. What did you bring that reminds you of, creates a sense of belonging for you?
Yeah, well, maybe I can start.
Yep.
This is a sort of a medal, and I got it at a little festival that I'm also organizing together with a group of people. And it's called Weiland, means actually us land. Mm-hmm. And this is based on the on the principles of Burning Man, and it means that there's a cashless society. Yeah. So
for who doesn't know, Burning Man is a community, a festival created by the community.
Indeed, yeah. So this is a little festival in the Netherlands, and I'm part of it, happily part of the community. And once we had a ceremony to open the festival, and I got this medal, and it always reminds me that I'm part of a creative community, and this
where
is
you
not
can
the
feel
only,
at home.
Yeah, and this is not the only creative community that I'm part of course, but it's definitely something that I belong to. Yeah.
Yeah, and also because you created shared principles, I assume that makes it feel such a welcoming and including community.
Absolutely, yeah. So this, when I thought of belonging, this was definitely something that.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that story. Tom, I want to ask you the same question, because what is the object that you brought?
I have it here.
Oh, what is it? It's a foldable chair.
It's a foldable camping chair.
I see it. I'm now actually pretty sad that you're not just joined us here in the studio, because then you could have brought the camping chair and just like sat on it. So you brought your own seat at the table.
No.
What does it represent to you?
Yes, to start there, this chair became important for me during the pandemic. Because I lived in a house there where I didn't have a garden. And then every morning, over time, I spent in this chair, sitting first in my front garden, or the shared front garden where all the bikes are. But then I also, because of the sun that moved, I tried to feel more at home also at the street level. So I put my chair outside the garden and put it in the street, and then more further away from my home in the street. And constantly also reflecting on, do I still feel okay to be here in this street? Is it my street? How do other people? Also, it was very warm. I would sit without a t-shirt, for example, almost like a camping style, and navigating this. What is mine and what is yours? And am I intrusive, or is it okay? So it's more of a search for belonging and a search for a homely feel in our public streets.
Yeah, well, that's also a little bit related to what you do at Raum, because there you also ask questions about public space and who does it belong to. Can you share a little bit more about what you do at what Raum is and what you do at Raum?
Yeah, so Raum is a city lab, a stadslab in Dutch. And we do projects with designers, architects, all kinds of makers, in which we work towards an inclusive city of the future. And now on show is an exhibition created by Zus Architect. It's titled Raum der Luste, and it's an alternative.
And it's currently you can currently visit it, right?
Yeah, so it's also outside, so you don't need to reserve. It's in Utrecht, and you can visit it anytime, any moment. And it's an alternative vision of public space, or an exciting experiment how an alternative public space could look like.
And Maartje, maybe to create the full context, you work at Makers Unite. Yeah. In short, what is Makers Unite, and what do you do there?
Yeah, well, Makers Unite is a social enterprise. So our social values are our highest priority. We have a local production facility here in Amsterdam, in the Halle. And we do local productions for fashion brands, and for we make garments and accessories for our clients.
Yeah, because you're originally a fashion designer, right?
Indeed, yeah. So I studied fashion design, and my biggest passion is also making. And that's why I actually ended up, of course, at Makers Unite, because we actually make, as you can see in the picture, products for our clients, and our clients share the same values as we do. So locally produced, sustainably, but also socially, because our team of tailors is our newcomers. Mm-hmm. So they have an immigrant background. And for Makers Unite and for us, it's really important that we work with all kinds of different cultures, and that we are able to make place in society for everyone. And we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. So that's why we have in our tailor team tailors from Syria, from China. And as you can see here, we also make products with different... so we do products for our clients, but we also initiate own projects. And this was one project with Bas Kosters, who designed, co-created with the community, a robot bag. And this was also, of course, made by our tailors. But next to that, next to our production facility, we also have our creative lab. And in the creative lab, I am the coordinator and facilitator.
And what does the creative lab do?
What does the creative lab do? Yeah, well, we have a program of workshops and sessions, and in which we actually help to prepare the newcomers with a creative background to integrate into the creative industry in the Netherlands. So we have workshops in, for example, CV and formal documents, but also in a session on hope. So with some personal development assignments. And what I really like is that we really want to create a safe space for our participants.
How do you do that? Because this is actually the relationship to creating a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
How do you do that in your particular work?
Yeah, well, for us it's super important that we create the safe space in which our community of participants of the Creative Lab and the people around us at Makers Unite feel at home. And we really want to create, together, and we want to create, give everyone the trust and the safety that they feel open enough to share and to share with us and to engage and to be part of Makers Unite.
Yeah, and that they're valuable and that there's room to experiment and to
absolutely
explore.
Yeah, but especially that that they feel safe. That's the most important. Yeah.
Tom, in your case, your working environment is more public space. Well, with public space, people use space in different ways. How can we create a sense of belonging in public space, and who do you cater?
Well, what fits nicely with the Maarten story, part of the Raam de Lust exhibition we have is the Moestuin we created with Common Ground 2, Utrecht-based organization.
So community garden.
Yeah, it's a community garden. Thanks for adding. It's a community garden where people with a background as a refugee work together with people from the neighborhood. And also this very ritual. In Dutch you say aarden. I don't know if it translates in English. But
grounding.
Yeah, grounding. Yeah. But I like it in Dutch. It's really about the matter as well. So therefore, these relationships over time being built, also the frequencies, a weekly basis, people will work in the gardens together. But it's also what I really noticed also over the course of this exhibition, because it's also just an experiment, that it's also a matter of practice and also a matter of being able to read what is okay for you to do there. So in the sense of a park, we've had parks for a long time, so we know what to do and not to do. And still, now how many barbecues can we have? That's an urgent question. But
and rules seem to have changed a little bit during the last year, right? Because you could see that public space, people have started using public space more and more. I mean, an example of you with your foldable chair, instead of going to a bar and sit outside to have a drink, you just like made your own little cafe.
True. Yeah, and what I really liked also over the summer, where nobody was behind the fences of a festival catering to their specific needs. Everybody was, or a lot of people were on blankets sharing the same park, and you could see different types of people there, different types of drinks being brought, different types of blankets being used, different types of conversation, different types of skin color. But what I really liked is then being able to share the values there, but also to borrow someone's opener for wine, for example. That's where these things happen. Like, okay, we maybe not share the same values, or we don't know it, but we do share appreciation of wine in this moment. But I don't happen to have an opener, so do you have one? And there, these relationships start building, and the bodies are next to each other. So it's also a way of navigating, of practicing what it means to be in such a diverse public space again.
Yeah, let's see later if we can draw some methodologies or similar techniques from that. First, I would like to introduce our fourth speaker, and that's Maggie. I almost lost count. Maggie Loong. Maggie, you're an associate professor in international development studies at Utrecht University and project coordinator of the Horizon 2020 project Welcoming Spaces. Before we ask you what Welcoming Spaces is, maybe I can ask you to introduce yourself by showing the object that you brought.
Thank you. I have to say it was a very difficult exercise.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I started thinking there are all kinds of meanings of belonging. So which one do I want to? And I made it very difficult and complicated. At the end, I thought back to
what is your favorite definition of belonging?
Well, because it's all, it could be something, as you guys say, right? In the space, physical space. It could also be, something relational. So it could be the country, could be all kinds of things, right? But I ended up deciding on this very personal one. I don't know if you could see.
Yeah, it's a ring.
It's a little ring.
It's a ring with a green stone.
Yeah, it is jade. And this piece of jade has a long history because it belongs to my grandmother.
Oh.
But it was the ring was very different. So my mom wanted to give me this piece of jade. And jade has a very special meaning for Cantonese. I grew up and I was born in Hong Kong, and I'm Cantonese, and jade means it gives people who carry it safety, as you say earlier. No, like there's this being protected. So I'm usually quite a rational person, but when I fly, I like to have a piece of jade with me. It doesn't have to be this ring. It could be something else because my mom gave me different pieces of jade in her course of life. But this particular one, as I said, was belonged to my grandmother, the jade itself.
So it carries your family history.
Yeah, I didn't know my grandmother so well, but I find it also interesting because my mom thought I would not wear it the way how it was done with my grandma, because the whole design was very sort of, old-fashioned or whatever you call that, traditional. So my mom actually made it anew and said, okay, this piece of jade is what matters. So I do it for you in the modern style, so you will wear it. And I think that's also something that I link with belonging or the sense of home or whatever that is always being made. And I hear a lot of these stories now shared by all of you too. Like Tom was also saying that we're always testing what is okay, what is not. So also let me think about, these are something that at different levels, right? It gives me feeling safety is something that it changes meaning, of course. And it's you see it's a visual thing, but for me, it's a lot more of another sense. When I touch it, I feel it. And even when I'm carrying something else, jade, I touch it when I'm flying. I don't necessarily look at it. So I agree with you also, like there are all these different senses, smell and taste and etc. that actually contribute to a certain sense of belonging. Maybe it's noise even sometimes, It doesn't always have to be very harmonious. But I really enjoyed this hearing from all of you these different kinds of meanings, and that confirm my thinking of, I know there's so many ways for us to engage with the idea of belonging.
And it's something interesting you said, because you said that the sense of belonging, it can be made. So that means that we can be the designers ourselves.
Yes.
So it's really interesting to see, like, and we can have that conversation later on, like, how do we make that, and how can we make that for everyone? But first, tell me something about welcoming spaces, because it's a project that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Welcoming spaces is a very big project. We have it's across 5 countries. We got money from the European Commission. And basically, we wanted to link 2 debates. One is this migration debate, which in Europe, we say, too many migrants coming, we have this crisis. And then the other debate in geography, I'm a geographer, the sort of these so-called shrinking areas, shrinking regions.
Yeah, because what are the countries that are participating?
Yeah, that's us in the Netherlands.
Yep.
We have in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and Poland. So 5 different places. And what we focus on are these so-called shrinking regions. So not the diverse, super diverse cities where a lot of these ideas about, migration and integration is being talked about. But we want to look at places that are so-called shrinking. Maybe people are out migrating to the extent that they have no schools anymore, to the extent there is no more shops. And so, we were thinking, not to say that we forced them, the migrants to go there, but can we see this as a opportunity where new communities can be built? And right now we are just after the first year of our project. So we're already finding, different kinds of examples, initiatives, successful or not. And across the 5 countries, we also, of course, want to learn, if there are any things that can be done differently, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. So that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Can you mention one successful and one unsuccessful approach?
There are quite a few. For example, successful, I think it's hard to say whether successful. Some of the things are successful and become problematic. I think some story, it's not one of our cases in Riace. Maybe some of you would know, in Italy, where there was a mayor who was very proactive and welcoming newcomers. And it was a very successful story being told all over the media. And suddenly then it backfired, because then people, who were opposed to that, then they finger point and they made it very difficult. And eventually, actually, that mayor had to resign or was voted out. So, you also have these stories where success become, too successful and then become dangerous. But what we find actually in general, factor of success is always this co-creative element. So it is not about, the locals welcoming the newcomers, but it are usually things that have different dimensions. It touches upon economic, about job providing, training, school maybe, but also about culture, where people come together and eat and have festivals. And also this openness of, we are creating something new. It's talking about new beginnings. We're not asking people to integrate to our village in Poland, but it should be something that look into the future as, what can we do together? In different ways, and also accept the fact that people might go again. And I think that's what we are learning from Spain, an example where they don't consider as a failure when these newcomers start leaving again. Now, that's always oftentimes the narrative, right? Or they don't stay forever, therefore, it cannot work. But how do we understand mobility as part of life and part of solutions as well?
Yeah. What have you heard from the previous speakers that resonate with the research you're doing?
Lots, actually. I was thinking also about these when Ineke was at the beginning saying about how feeling often a little bit out of place is also the time for us to think about what then is belonging. And I think in our research we're looking at newcomers as in they have moved to these places. They have to maybe leave their own homes to go somewhere else. So it is. I think it's always these contradictions always linked, where you feel, that you are out of place and therefore you look for and you create, hopefully with others, new spaces of belonging. So I think this dynamic indeed, that's one thing that I see connection. Another thing I saw is what I said earlier also, how it is always being made. And one question I had was also then, the power in, who make decision. Because sometimes when we talk about belonging, we seem to make it very personalized, right? Like, how do we feel? But I think in many of the examples we hear already, note or are reminded how, of course, belongings are also decisions made by others, right? Like whether you can feel belong or not.
Yep.
If you think about political issues, where your home can be redefined, so that certainly you should not belong here anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's about active, but also not forgetting that there are also other actors.
Yeah, and also questioning we have ourselves, as in the sense of belonging to others.
Right. Yeah. So it's just a relational process, not just psychological feeling you belong or not. Huh?
Yeah.
So I think that's important, sort of a social political perspective of belonging that we have to remember often. That there is power, and who makes decision, who denies other people's spaces as well.
Yeah, maybe this is a nice moment also to include everyone else in this conversation, because what Maggie is saying, Ineke, is also something, a discussion that you wanted to stir here in the Netherlands. Well, due to Ms. Rona, you were not able to showcase the movie to stir that discussion. But if you, you might be in a few months. What are you hoping to create when showing this film to the Dutch audience? Because it's something that takes place somewhere else, but it's also really relevant to how we live here in the Netherlands.
Yes, exactly. And for the reason that it is, I mean, on purpose, I made a film in an area that hardly anybody has ever heard about, and not many people have visited. Then you can take away all the sort of preconceived ideas about certain groups in society or whatever. What I'm trying to do is to come really to the core of what is this belonging. That's what I try to question, and it's also what I would like to talk about with audiences. That this sense of belonging is something that we all have, and like Maggie was saying, it's also something that sometimes is constructed, sometimes it gives a kind of something to cling to, and all these kind of issues are dealt with in the film, but not in the Dutch context. Mm-hmm. But you can read them. You can read them as something that you can apply to yourself.
Yeah, you could see it as a metaphor.
Absolutely, and I think a metaphor is very, very important to be able to talk about things. I mean, we've seen it in the film. I mean, what is quite interesting, in the context of this whole conversation, is that basically the form of the film is that we have a little show that tells the story of the maker. And then this little show is traveling to all kinds of different communities within Abkhazia. Also communities that hate each other or have doubts about each other or have different ideas. And because it is Sipa's story made in a different form, namely in a puppet show, it gives them the liberty to reflect on it. There's this. It's very beautiful to see that actually works, and we were very surprised because people in Abkhazia, in that part of the world, are not used to discuss these things. They're not used to discuss what ties them to a country or what obstructs this being able to feel at home. So this metaphor helps people to be able to feel free to talk about these things, which is also literally said in one of the discussions. So basically, what we did in the film is that this little show in this little tent is traveling around all these places, and after each showing, there is a debate. Yeah. So there's a little discussion with the people who are actually who have been looking at the show.
What is the outcome? How do people leave the room afterwards?
Well, I mean, very, very different, of course, I mean, we had very different people. But in general, what especially the people in Abkhazia were very happy about is that people had the courage to talk about things that actually they feel inside. You have to imagine that is a war-ridden country, like you saw in the trailer. It's been war there for a long, long time. and that people actually managed to talk about it. They felt free to talk about it. That's one thing. And the other thing is that memories were provoked without the context of the war. Which is also very good, because everything, it's very strange to be in a country where the war is decisive for everything that is done in culture, that is done for the public, like celebrations of commemorative, how do you say that, events and so on. So it's very good to see that there's something else, and this is also Sipa. I mean, just to give you a small example, one of how Sipa started to work there as a sculptor is that he put, as you also saw in the trailer in the beginning, he put small statues on the seaside boulevard of Sukhumvit, which is the capital. And they had nothing to do with the war. So there were no war monuments. They were not, photos or statues of soldiers or whatever. They were not broken down houses. It was just a kid with a chicken under his arm. That was the statue. And it provoked a discussion because it was a figure of a famous Abkhazian writer. So it was Abkhazian, definitely, but it had nothing to do with the war. And some people were against it because they felt unsure or whatever, they think that the war is really important. But it also provoked other feelings of feeling at home for a lot of people. Does that answer your question?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm also trying to search, and maybe I can ask that a little bit to Tom and Maartje as well, because the Georgian, the Abkhazia situation is different than the Dutch situation.
One, yes.
But still, it's also really important to talk about that sense of belonging here in the Netherlands. And maybe I can ask you, Maartje, because what are the, I don't want to call it struggles immediately, but why is this conversation so important here as well?
Yeah, well, why it is so important is that so what we see at Makers Unite is, I really liked what Maggie actually said about co-creation and belonging on different dimensions. Because you can easily think of belonging at a certain place or belonging to a certain culture or belonging, well, there are a lot of things that you can belong to.
Yeah, it's a variety of identities, right? It could
Absolutely.
be gender, sexual orientation, culture.
Yeah, and what I like is that creativity and co-creation, with creativity and co-creation, you can actually make your own sense of belonging. And that's what I and Makers Unite is really working towards, is that we're creating a new sense of belonging by co-creating together and valuing each other. And yeah, so I think, and also making clear that sense of belonging doesn't necessarily have to be, as Maggie also said, like integrating into a new culture in the Netherlands. We really see it as a collaboration, as an open, co-creative space where everything is welcome and open. So when you approach it in that way, then what is belonging and where do you belong towards?
And it's also about creating a new sense of belonging.
Indeed, yeah. And I think that's the step towards, making the sense of belonging.
Tom, how can you see that coming back in the work that you do?
That what I had I had to think of this practicing and this constant movement. I'm at the location a lot, of course, and I was talking to some people or walking by, and then I explained what was the idea, but it was also more an invitation for these people at a Syrian background. And I said, we have a public pizza oven. We have a public space to make fires in public space, which is normally not necessarily the case. So I said to her, like, it's really okay if you want to be there with families or you want to host a party. Please use our ovens. Please use our fire pits to sit together, read stories, share rituals, whatever. And she was really like, is it okay? Can I do this? And how does it work then and practical? So it's a longer process in which we have to invest in this openness and constantly inviting, and also in programs we do in activating the pizza ovens, for example, that other people see like, oh wow, this is something in public that we can use. Mm-hmm. But we have to also build kind of new rituals and new conventions around these things. So what can happen in public space maybe refers also back to my chair thing there. So what do we want with this public space? Is it just a way to travel to your work and to the supermarket and your friends? Mm-hmm. Or can it also be a place where you feel seen, represented, feel home, feel safe, as Maartje says, but more related to the indoor? This is really an outdoor feeling. And maybe to add to that, I sometimes spend the night also there because we have like small homes, and you can really see the types of visitors switching towards the night. Mm-hmm. At night, there are people with motorbikes and scooters, and for them, this night is safe and this night is home, because during the day they feel like, okay, well, maybe I'm not the person who should visit art exhibitions, or it's not like I don't belong here. Mm-hmm. But at night, it's a completely different context, and therefore other people start using this space differently. Yeah. That for me is also super inspiring.
Yeah, and you do this in the City Lab, so it's well, it's pretty big, but it's also small scale. If we're gonna upgrade this, and it's actually a question of asking how can we get more people to co-create a city, because it's really about co-creating, and I guess it's also feeling more ownership about it, and that's what you've seen. What happened last year? How we entered public space and how we used it, and it felt like we even shared it more. What would be a good thing? Like, what is the best way to make this actually bigger? You know, give this an upgrade. So not only in the City Lab, but see a whole city as a City Lab. What if you could be the mayor for a day? What would you say, Tom?
Yeah. At least time would be very important. So
okay, so not for a day.
Yeah, very long time experiment, so mm-hmm. that things can really crystallize and become. And yeah, I think we also have to unlearn a lot of things. So unlearn what is supposed to happen there and unlearn what's supposed to happen here. So a sense of absurdism, a sense of not knowing, a sense of like looking at your neighbor, like, I don't know what's happening here. Yeah, me neither. Okay, but it feels like I can sit there. Yeah, okay, let's go. That is some kind of a situation that I would really like to happen. Yeah, how we have to scale it, or how to have to create that, I don't know. But this less clarity maybe is something that I would really like.
Maggie, I see you nodding.
Yeah, I find it very interesting. I also question, do we want to scale it? You know, like, what does it mean by scaling, right? Like a multiplication, or like just enlargement? Or do we think of scaling as, yeah, sort of like the flowers, you know, sort of shooting out everywhere? Kind of, you know, like I can imagine different neighborhoods, you might need different kind of pop-up spaces or whatever spaces. And what I'm hearing is also, I was thinking also, you know, that they're bound to be conflict, huh? Because I think, of course, now when we're talking, we sort of focus on, I think, Maartje, even like your co-creative space also might have issues and questions and conflict. And I think that is also a part of the recipe, right? Like how to deal with these kind of conflicts when they arise.
Yeah, because it could be a paradox, right? Like that one group may feel like they belong while the other doesn't. Even if you start creating more for one group, then the other. So talking about belonging sounds a little bit like could be turn out to be a paradox too.
Can I?
Yeah, well, Ineke wants to add something to that.
Yeah, I just wonder. I mean, I'm just, you know, an artist and not like you guys, you know, completely focused on this kind of thing. I was wondering how are these people who are actually using these spaces, how are they contributing to making the space, or are you basically making a tabula rasa that would fit all their things, or do you? I mean, how does that process works? But because everybody, as far as I'm concerned, everybody has something that, you know, like, I have this, you have that, you know. We all have something that makes us feel at home. It can be a song, it can be a dinner or whatever. So how do you... I mean, how do you integrate that? As I can see,
so it sounds actually really easy, but practice turns out it's sometimes a struggle.
Tabula rasa, like, you know, like, or it's how you. I mean, how do you do that? I'm just curious.
Who wants to answer that question?
Well, I can. So what we do is actually we invite our community members and participants of the Creative Lab to be part of a co-creation session in which we do a brainstorm, or they take something and through all these. What I really liked, Ineke, what you said about the statue of the kid with the
chicken.
With the chicken, yeah. I think the key is creativity. Actually, it's going back to some sort of innocence, childness, in which we all feel open and can relate to, and that's where I think there's an opening to actually make these connections of different cultures or different input of different people. And I really like that sometimes, you see sort of twinkles in people's eyes, and like, oh, I can bring something in. This is valuable, what I say, and oh, we can make this connection. And so recently we did a little creative assignment in which we asked them 3 words, and they had to draw it in one element or one object. And I saw the joy on their faces of just thinking outside of the box, just thinking out loud. And I think that's really the way to connect and to make that new sense of belonging.
So culture is a very, very, I mean, culture and the arts are very important to make this connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Maybe we should talk to our government about this.
No,
yes.
But this is actually a nice
culture is very, very
question.
important.
Yeah, to the answer also fun. Okay, especially for someone watching this program at home now, but also for me to take into account, like, what am I going to do the next day? What am I going to do tomorrow to create a safer space where everyone feels like they belong? You added, like, okay, bring an open perspective and bring creativity to the table.
Absolutely.
Ineke, what would you bring? What would you
The arts, we respect the arts and use the arts as a kind of a free space where you can actually make the connections between people. In the most wide sense of the word. So arts is also like music and dinner and, you know, whatever.
Tom, what would you say, what we can do, a little act that we can already do tomorrow to create a safer space where everyone feels like they belong?
Yeah, looking for new ways to communicate. A colleague of mine is doing this course in nonviolent communication, for example. So, because if we are there together with all these necessities and all these ideas, like, how do we manage and how do we feel safe in sharing? Oh, wait, I don't like it. The other one, okay, then don't feel offended. Like, how does this, again, navigation work again? And what do we have to learn also in the city at large? And what does it mean to be a citizen? What does it mean to be a public citizen? And I think we really need more skills. And I'm also wondering, like, where do we need to learn those? But
and the
communication
awareness
is key. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And debate, what I see is debate is also something which is disappearing.
Yeah.
You know, there's this...
Well, especially now in times that we can't really come together and we have to do everything online, right? So hopefully you can show your movie again soon. Maggie, what would you like to add as a final thing?
Yeah, I think it sort of echoes some of the things that, for example, the learning, co-learning, but I think it's important for us to be reflexive of our own privilege. Oftentimes, also to unlearn, like, maybe it's a violent situation, but sometimes it's not even that. Something is so intrinsic, and we think it's okay to do it like that, or I help you, I empower you, I give you belonging, and all these we have to reflect.
Yeah.
And then we can go on to say how to co-create for new beginnings.
Yeah. So be aware of your own experiences and be aware of those of others.
Definitely.
Thank you. Well, I've heard a lot of things that I'm gonna even more use in my life from tomorrow on. And talking about arts, let's close this program with some arts. I want to thank you all now for now to share your stories with us and give us new inspiration. And I want to move over to Xilam Kroy, because we have him here in the studio with us. Thank you for joining us. You're going to bring us some arts.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. First, I want to ask you, sense of belonging. Have you heard us talk about this the last hour?
Yeah.
What is belonging? What does it mean to you?
Well, it means having a safe space. It means getting all the room and all the space I need to be emotionally vulnerable, and to transform that into my art. A sense of belonging, our people, our places, are it's a feeling I get from places and feelings.
Yeah, and I think that vulnerability, making connections to other, feel free and have room for transformation. That is something that is that are themes that you are talking about, or actually through your music.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my music is about certain aspects of my life in which I did not feel like I belonged, and a lot of my lyrics are translations of those feelings of not belonging. For instance, the song I'm gonna play sounds like a heartache song, but it's a heartache that's rooted in insecurity and rooted in like fitting a beauty standard, or fitting or living up to a certain ideal of masculinity. So yeah, it's always very layered in my music, but at the core, yeah, it resonates with the topics that were talked about tonight. Yeah.
In that sense, what would your ideal world look like, and how would we get there?
My ideal world, I think it starts with listening. It starts with listening and believing people when they express their needs when it comes to this topic, belonging, and what they
so
need.
Every story is valid.
Yeah, every story is valid, and I think also what was said tonight was that the sense of belonging can be created. And that's something, to me, that sounds very hopeful, because
to me too. Yes,
that means that it's possible if we put in some effort, because sometimes it does take some effort. Sometimes it does take having uncomfortable conversations, for instance.
It can be uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
But we need to go through that uncomfortableness.
Yeah, but that's where we grow, of course, in the outside of the comfort zone. And I think, I think that if we focus on, as I said earlier, listening to people and hearing their stories, that it becomes easier to create a world in which everybody feels a sense of belonging.
Talking about listening, we're going to listen to you now.
Thank you.
Pretty Boy, you're going to play for us?
Pretty Boy.
Okay, so I'm really looking forward. Thank you. Xilam Kroy.
I was always quite a sensitive boy. Every cool kid's favorite toy. And I was used to being used, pushed around, kept in place, bend it backwards till I bruised. Blame my poor romantic mind for the mess we made. We got these white lies all piled up and dirty. It's both a blessing and a curse. See the beauty in everything, everything. And I saw beauty in your pride and beauty in your lies. Beauty in your honesty and your stubborn mind. Beauty in your anger and those melancholic eyes I saw. Beauty in your tears and beauty in your fear of love. Love, 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 love. Your fear of love. Love, 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 love. How come the pretty boys get all of the joy? How come the pretty boys get to choose their toys? How come the pretty boys get to change the rules to the game? And how come the pretty boys, they never let me play? Yeah. I wanna be a pretty boy. I wanna play. Yeah. I wanna be a pretty boy. Just let me play. I was always quite a sensitive boy. Every cool kid's favorite toy. Thank you.
Thank you, Xilan. And with this, we've come to the end of this program. I want to thank all our speakers that are Ineke Smits, Tom Loijs, Maartje Jansen, Maggie Leung, and Xilan McCroy. I see you, and I think you're all pretty. I also want to thank Robin Ringel and Jonathan Chin Vo, because they have been our interns here at Pakhuis de Zwijger for the last half year. And thanks to them, this program today existed because it's all their work. Thank you for your efforts the last half year and also today. You are pretty too. I want to close this by announcing that if you are a student or a young designer or designer-to-be, you can join our Designing Cities for All book club. we give away 25 copies of The Precipice, and it's some summer literature for you because we're going to read it together, and somewhere at the end of the summer we're going to discuss it together with our Designing Cities for All Fellows Dark Matter Labs. And you can find more information on dezwijger.nl/DCFA. That's where you can also find our online research file where you can look back all the live casts from Designing Cities for All, and you can find this one there too if you want to watch it back later. Lastly, if you want to support Pakhuis de Zwijger in these times of online events, you can go to dezwijger.nl/pay as you like, or PAYL. And we hopefully can open our doors again in September. So then I would love to see all of you back here in the room. Thank you for joining, and we will see you next time.